The journos are the ones who want censorship really almost more than anybody else because they view it as protecting their purview of having an elevated perch from which to opine and share news. They don't want it to be a free and open playing field. And all the journos, the blue check journos who have been picking fights with people like you and me, Clay, for years, and it's like, oh, look at that person get dragged. Yeah, because Democrats have a huge advantage based not just on the ideological breakdown of the Twitter audience, but on the actual algorithms, the actual playing field itself. Elon Musk is a threat to all of this in a way that they have not seen before.
Elon Musk and all the changes that he's made to Twitter. He tweeted in the last 20 minutes or so that Apple has stopped advertising on Twitter, as have many other big brands, despite the fact that according to the data that Elon Musk has shared, more people are using the site than ever before since he purchased the company. And now Elon is kind of going to war with Apple on Twitter, which is going to be interesting to follow. But what I would say, Buck, is for you and I and many people who are out there listening to us right now, Elon is creating a fair marketplace for ideas. And so if you have been in this community out there and you're saying, hey, I don't know why I would ever get on Twitter. It's super frustrating. It's not accurate reflection of what opinions really are. I think you need to go sign up and stand up for free speech with what Elon Musk is doing now.
I think Elon Musk is in a position to do more for free speech as an individual than any person since the invention of the internet. I think that's honestly where he is. I really believe that. I mean, this is seismic. This is massive if he continues on this pathway. But Clay, the apparatus is going to throw everything they have at him to try to stop this.
And that's why I would encourage all of you listening right now, the millions of you who listen to Clay and Buck every day, go sign up for Twitter. Get involved in the fight. You can find Buck and me at Clay Travis, at Buck Sexton. What is going on here, what Elon Musk is doing, is really seismically important.
When you see this newspaper headline, opening the gates of hell, that might be a subtle clue that you're not getting an unbiased report, but that's how the latest decision by Elon Musk is described in a Washington Post news story. With that quote from a Harvard instructor who also says Apple and Google should consider booting Twitter off the App Store. Pluck for the headline. After posting another Twitter poll, Musk announced he's granting a general amnesty for most accounts suspended in the past, with 72% of the 3 million votes cast in favor. Look, as with the reinstatement of Donald Trump, these online polls are a cover for what Musk wants to do anyway. And when he says the suspensions will be dropped for accounts that, quote, provided they have not broken the law or engaged in egregious spam, it does raise questions about how these decisions will be made and whether it's a green light for people who posted truly awful stuff. But when the Post story says many predict the restoration of banned accounts will help bring on a free-for-all hellscape, well, every single expert quoted is slamming Musk. That includes the chairman of the crusading liberal group Media Matters, described only as a nonprofit advocacy group and media watchdog, who says Twitter will become a one-stop shop for doxing and harassment and an engine of radicalization. Right. Elon Musk made clear from the start he's a free speech advocate who would end permanent bans in most cases. And most journalists preferred the old rules, which usually penalize conservatives. Now, Musk is fair game for criticism. But how about a token effort to include a couple of voices who don't think he's taking us all to hell?
Howie Kurtz just calling it like it is on the Twitter situation. Welcome back to Clay and Buck. I think this is really important. What you're seeing right now is the first time from the flotilla of lib propaganda online. One ship has finally switched its flag, and not even to the right. It's just neutral, if you will, to free speech. And Clay, he laid out something. There are already some rumors about this where Apple may decide. Apple has already pulled, we talked about this, and Elon Musk has called them out, pulled advertising from Twitter. So the Twitter that was willing to allow the Iranian mullahs to have their accounts. You know, Hamas could keep its account.
Taliban.
Taliban can get that was all okay. But, Alex Berenson, Jordan Peterson, and former President Trump, that's where Apple draws the line when it comes to their advertising. But the notion that they may try to do to Twitter what they did to Parler was raised here. Now that Elon has bought this for $44 billion and seems to be, there's no reason for him not to see through the mission, right? I mean, why take on the headache if you're not going to really do this? Clay, they mentioned blocking Twitter from the App Store. Now what you're seeing, you kind of, when you're bringing down a cartel, you find, first you get the street dealer, and then you find the regional distributor, and then you go back and maybe you find the mule that brought it to the regional distributor, and then you go all the way up to, the Don Corleone, the Scarface, the head of the criminal organization, the head of the cartel. Who is the guy? He's kind of a little guy, El Chapo. You go find El Chapo. This is similar in this case. We're working our way up through the architecture of propaganda and control online for the left. What you're finding is that even if you take the Twitter piece out, what stands above Twitter in the digital hierarchy of the left? Apple.
Well, this is why
they control the infrastructure and the architecture.
This is why what happened to Trump was so important in terms of him being shut down simultaneously by every social media company, but also what happened to Parler. Because when they shut down Parler and when they shut down the ability for many different quote-unquote right-wing companies to be able to even reach their audiences, that was a test, basically, of the structure that they had built that would disallow anyone who might share an opinion that they don't like to even be able to have those opinions distributed. And what's fascinating to me about Elon is he is creating, I think this is a calculated choice by him to be tweeting about Apple pulling their advertising. He's creating a big tech battle because a lot of these companies that are big tech, you know what they did, Buck? They kind of avoided competing, right? Google had its lane. Apple has its lane. And they may not be best friends, but they're really not competing. They have their own monopoly. If you go on right now your laptop or your computer screen, Google basically owns search. If you use a iPhone or I should say mobile phone, but the fact that the iPhone is branded to such an extent, who's a competitor of Apple right now, Buck? Like in a real way. Google, Android, I guess, maybe. There's not really a brand that is in any way really big competitors with Apple. I would argue, if you look at what happened with Kanye West with his shoe being pulled from Adidas, if you look at the way that Apple's behaving, there is a recipe and a market right now for a right-wing version of Apple. And what Elon Musk is trying to do is go right down the middle with Twitter. And what he's learning, Buck, is if you go right down the middle, that's considered right-wing now. You have to be so far left-wing in order to be firmly in the left-wing camp now, whether it's Hollywood, whether it's tech, all these companies, that if you just say, hey, we're going to go right down the middle and apply even standards, that's not permissible.
How did we get to a point in American society where the most powerful companies and the companies that control more communication and flow of information than anything else on earth would think that Jordan Peterson saying that, men should aspire to be men and masculinity isn't toxic, that is too dangerous for society. He should not be allowed to say that. And we could go down the list of all kinds of people. But I keep seeing these videos of 10-year-olds, 8-year-olds putting dollar bills in the, areas of, around the waistband of
G-strings.
Of drag queens. How do you get to that? The way you get to that point, unfortunately, is with absolute behind-the-scenes left-wing dominance of our communications infrastructure. You and I, very luckily, exist because we have radio. We have over 450, give or take, radio stations, our affiliates that carry us. So that's not subject to the whims of the wokeness of the blue-haired, unhappy, and vicious left-wingers who are running all this stuff. But what we're seeing, Yes?
No, it's such a great point. We should mention iHeart covers every aspect of politics. If you want to get left-wing politics, like our company, our parent company covers everything. What you're hitting at is there's a calculated decision to not serve certain markets and even take the next step beyond serving that market and say you're not allowed to even distribute that content, which is the next level. And that is incredibly, should be scary to anyone out there.
I mean, imagine that our national political conversation, and people say, oh, but what about Fox News? Oh, well, okay, yeah, that's when you if you're looking at news organizations and social media platforms, the right, which is half the country, gets about 5% of the pie. We're at about 5%, maybe 10% of the overall pie when you add, because remember, it's not just the websites you know super well. It's all the other websites. It's all the YouTube influencers and TikTok influencers. It's not just MSNBC and CNN. It's PBS. It's NBC News. You go down the list. They achieve this level of dominance, and they also have behind the scenes the false perception of platform parity, which has been so essential. You know, there's three different forms, Clay, of propaganda that people generally talk about, right? There's white propaganda, which is you know what it is. You know where it comes from, right? You and me saying, we love this candidate or whatever. You could argue that's white propaganda, but you know where it is. Gray propaganda is when it's just of unknown origin, right? They drop leaflets out of the sky that say, vote so-and-so. And then what they would refer to as black propaganda is when you're actually lying about the source of it, right? So I'm pretending to be someone on MSNBC and I'm telling people what to do. The social media platforms in part have been so powerful because they've been operating under the lie that they aren't doing what they're doing. And this is the part of it that I think everyone's really seeing unearthed right now. Yeah, you know CNN is liberal. Yeah, you know MSNBC is liberal. But Google and Facebook and, you know, which obviously Google owns YouTube, all these different platforms, they became monopolists by saying we're not doing the thing that you think we're doing. It's insidious what they have done. And Elon is exposing them right now, which means, Clay, they're not going to let this go. They can't. It threatens their power too much.
And I'll just say this as we go to break and we're about to hit you with an ad read. Apple and Google would not advertise on this program. I mean, just think about it. They wouldn't. If Apple and Google had an outreach program, they wouldn't advertise on this program because they don't respect all of you and your political opinions. If Buck and I were doing a left-wing show, left-wing version of this show, they would spend money hand over fist with us at Apple and Google to be able to reach a much smaller audience just because they would say we respect that audience that we were trying to talk to if we were on the left wing.
Yeah, I mean, Clay, we could just like sit here, man, and be like, yo, there totally are 37 genders and real socialism has never been tried. And maybe we just send that clip, you know, oh, men don't have an advantage in sports. So what if that guy's 6'4", 240? Like, he should, you know, maybe we send that clip to Apple and be like, hey, give us some advertising dollars, you jerks.
Just think about that. It's a calculated decision, and it's happening all over the country, and Elon Musk is disrupting that calculation. He's got the resources to be able to fight the battle. I don't know how it's going to turn out, but just think about it. It's going to be messy, and we finally got somebody who's willing to fight that battle. To your point, Buck, Rupert Murdoch has been, but if Rupert Murdoch didn't exist, there would not be really on both newspapers and television media a counterpunch to the mainstream media.
Without Rush, Rupert Murdoch, and a few other, we would be to the left of Canada politically right now. It would already have happened.
And the whole country would have locked down. Think about how scary that is. The Fauci would have won. Elon Musk tweeted 5 minutes ago, Apple has also threatened to withhold Twitter from its app store, but won't tell us why. Buck, you may remember all the companies in the wake of January 6th, which Apple pulled off of its app store. Parler, Rumble, do you remember?
Yeah, they pulled a bunch of... We just said this. He just tweeted this 6 minutes ago as we're talking to you. So we talked about it. There was a commercial break, and now he's talking about it publicly. I'm just, so for anyone who's wondering, we're on the pulse of this thing. Yeah, it was Parler they pulled off. They've also been... I think they might have done it to... Or they threatened to do it to Gab at one point. And they always, can I be clear about this too? They always lie, Clay, about why. They say it's because they don't do enough to clean up the white supremacy and you know the vitriol of hate and all this stuff. No, they don't want like Republicans on there. Like they don't want mainstream conservatives. It's nothing to do with the neo-Nazis that are on the platform.
And I think the question that a lot of you are probably have in your head is, how do we get here? And I do think you asked that question a little bit earlier, Buck, to an era. Think about this. To an era when Apple and Google, two massive tech companies, would never advertise on this radio show. Like, we could go out to Apple and Google. We could give them favored nation status. We could say, hey, you want to advertise Google, your search engine? Do you want to advertise what does Google own? YouTube? Do you want to advertise YouTube on Clay and Buck, the biggest radio show in the country? Hey, Apple, you're getting into creating original content. You have all these television shows that you're putting out. You know, Clay and Buck are willing to talk about television shows that they watch. If they watch an Apple show, you want to advertise on that show? They would say no. And if they got asked, they said, why not? They said, well, Republicans listen to that show. How did we end up in an American society when our biggest companies are unwilling to even be associated with at least half of the country's political beliefs? And what does it say about Elon Musk? All he's doing is saying, hey, guys, I want Twitter to be a full-on marketplace of ideas. I want there to be content neutral policies. And for people out there who are not lawyers, you hear phrases like content neutral. It's like, they just want everybody treated the same, right? And if you're going to ban somebody off Twitter, it's going to be because they threatened to kill somebody, not because they named, Ellen Page? Not because they dead named Ellen Page, who starred in Juno and was nominated for an Oscar. And that's not acceptable because Ellen Page has decided now that the new name is a dude, and it's Elliot Page, and you're not even allowed to mention the history of Ellen Page anymore. That was going on.
They suspended people, Clay, for tweeting out "learn to code" when a bunch of journalists got fired.
Yeah.
So you weren't allowed to make fun of fired journalists. Why? Because the Twitter libs, for health and safety or whatever they call it, trust and safety. There you go, trust and safety. Neither to be trusted nor about your safety. They are friends with all those journos at BuzzFeed, at Slate.com, at all these crap sites that shouldn't exist anyway. But here we are. And when I say shouldn't, I just mean nobody should read them. I mean, they're free to exist. But here we are seeing this exposed. I mean, if Apple turning in this way, look, you know, they always say, oh, fine, we'll just compete. You know, they had this moment where they realize they don't have total control. And then they panic and they go, oh, no, we actually just have to cut off. You know, we have to cut off your supplies. We have to cut off your ability to actually compete because their ideas are fragile. They're idiotic. And I think they realize, Clay, that the dominoes will fall. I've been saying this all along. Once Twitter becomes not only a free speech platform, but a much better business.
Yes.
That is actually making a lot of money because all of a sudden people are like, well, I actually can go on there and not only can I share my ideas, but the people I want to hear from, I can see their ideas. Gee, sounds pretty normal. What's it going to do to Facebook? What's it going to do to YouTube? And you might say, oh, those companies are so big they don't care. I mean, not if, you know, if people realize that that Twitter all of a sudden is a massive success story. These are publicly traded companies. There's a fiduciary responsibility that comes into play.
And this is where we talk about the resorting of America. COVID made red redder and blue bluer. We saw that to many ways play out in the 2022 election, certainly in a state like Florida. How much of business, I just want you to think about this in the years ahead, how much of business is going to be, this is a business for red state America, this is a business for blue state America. My most recent book, Buck, was called Republicans Buy Sneakers Too, because it was a quote from Michael Jordan when he was asked why he did not get political. The pathway of Nike from, we're going to make Michael Jordan super rich because he's the greatest basketball player of all time, and we want to sell Air Jordans to Republicans and Democrats, to we're going to make Colin Kaepernick rich because he took a knee on the national anthem, is a perfect window into where we have gone as a country and the failures to embrace the meritocracy and excellence.
I haven't seen one Twitter account be able to move the national news cycle like this since Donald Trump was really active
right.
on Twitter. Elon Musk is now the single most influential Twitter account in the world in terms of news cycle. I don't know, maybe Kim Kardashian is at selling like lip gloss or something, but in terms of directing the news cycle, no one right now I think has the same kind of sway that Elon Musk does. And the idea that Apple may be putting its foot down against Twitter, the thing is, Clay, though, there's nowhere to hide for these companies anymore, because what they're really saying isn't you need to protect people from death threats, because that was happening all the time on Twitter. You need to, have the laws enforced on Twitter. We're all in favor of that. You got to enforce the laws, the actual laws, because there isn't a total blank check when it comes to all free speech. We all know this. I mean, you can't actually make death threats, for example, against people. Credible death threats against people can be prosecuted. But the problem that they really have, that these companies, that the left, that it is fascinating to watch journalists become the ultimate censor allies here. The journos are the ones who want censorship really almost more than anybody else, because they view it as protecting their purview of having an elevated perch from which to opine and share news. They don't want it to be a free and open playing field. And all the journos, the blue check journos who have been picking fights with people like you and me, Clay, for years, and it's like, oh, look at that person get dragged. Yeah, because Democrats have a huge advantage based not just on the ideological breakdown of the Twitter audience, but on the actual algorithms, the actual playing field itself. Elon Musk is a threat to all of this in a way that they have not seen before, and that they're really considering. These companies are considering pulling ads, for example, or pulling their finances. They can't say it's because of your health or your I keep saying health, trust and safety. The reason they're pulling ads is because the left has to have information dominance, or else. That's it.
I can't believe I'm saying this. Elon Musk should buy all of Fox. Just tossing out a big idea, right? Elon Musk just spent $40 billion on Twitter. And if he truly wanted to create his own apparatus like Rupert Murdoch has, imagine what he could do with Fox News, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Post, and all of the assets, including Outkick, a site that I run still for Fox, all of the assets to speak truth to power that he could bring to bear. Now, maybe one of the things is he just builds his own communication infrastructure. But as I look and think, to me, Twitter for Elon Musk is a legacy play. And people can criticize Rupert Murdoch, and Lord knows he's one of the most criticized people on the planet, probably. But I think Rupert Murdoch built Fox and has bought the Wall Street Journal and all these other assets because not only is he a smart businessman, but he feels deeply that we do need a marketplace of ideas. And that is sort of the ethos of Fox. If you go watch Fox News, they constantly, this is why conservatives are so much better informed than liberals, because we live in a left-wing world. We can't just be in our bubble, right? We know the arguments of MSNBC, Buck, you and I do, better than a lot of the MSNBC hosts do.
We could do a whole show as smarmy libs, and if people didn't know who we were and we just put it in like a left-wing podcast feed, they'd be like, yeah, those guys are like really on it, man. Those guys know what's up. They would totally buy into it. I could do a show as a lib without missing a beat because I know all the absurd arguments that they make backwards and forwards. They don't know what the right actually believes, which is why they're so comfortable caricaturing it. And this is obviously elevated or helped along by their control and dominance on these platforms. But for these companies, there's nowhere to hide anymore. If you're going to bail out on Twitter, what you're saying is, I need left-wing ideas to reign supreme in the internet ecosystem, or else I'm pulling my dollars. There's no other reason for it.
The reason I mentioned the Fox News connection is if you're going to focus in any way your business on advertising, look who advertises during Tucker. Look who advertises during Sean Hannity. They're not getting tons of dollars from Apple, right? There are certain companies that say, we support free speech, and they will advertise during commercial breaks. And the same attacks that are occurring right now on Elon, which are they're trying to take away his advertising revenue at Twitter to cripple his ability to run that business, are what they have been doing to Rupert Murdoch for generations. And I just think about the combination of all those assets together. It's a really intriguing idea, at least if Elon wanted to go really big.
You know, man, this brings me back to how we have to start thinking about using, because we've been saying after the midterms, if the enemy is using tactics that allow them to win, you have to consider what those tactics are, and if you should be using them as well, right? If they're within the rules of the game, if they're ethical, you should be using what works. I don't know enough about the football, but like the spread offense or with a West Coast or whatever, the people that know,
everybody copies everything in sports.
Right.
You have a successful play, put a new version in.
And so in the election aftermath, we've been saying ballot harvesting, registering people via mail, all these things, or registering people, taking the mail-in voting campaigns. The same thing is true at some level on the media front, and particularly with advertisers and sponsors and platforms. If we were always living on borrowed time in the era of the internet, which is where, and I've seen this increasingly, Clay, YouTube and these different digital platforms and TikTok, younger and younger people, when you look at the breakdown, the demographic breakdown, this is where young people get all of their information, meaning people that are under 30, they're not watching cable news almost, period, full stop. A tiny, tiny fraction of them are. And fewer of them are even on Facebook, I would say. What you see are people who are using these platforms, and they had total information dominance. And they also had created this sphere where, if you're, to your point, why doesn't, we got plenty of people in this audience who want to drive, I was going to say a Mercedes, but want to drive a Ford, want to drive whatever. They won't advertise on any conservative platform whatsoever. But you'll see lunatics on MSNBC being like, America's racist and awful. Buy a Ford.
Yeah.
And you'll say, well, why is that okay? Why is that happening?
It is that's why I said earlier, if you were listening to the show in the second hour, the idea of Elon Musk buying all of Fox, and I'm just tossing that out. I work at Fox. That's where Outkick is. Obviously, I work here with this show as well. But building an entire apparatus so you don't have to rely on woke advertising and building your own company. You tweeted this out, but instead of relying on Apple to distribute Twitter, why would Elon Musk not want to build his own phone? He's already built his own car company. He's already built his own spaceship rocket company. The building a phone does not seem like it would be a very difficult thing to do compared to send rockets to space better than NASA and redesign the internal car combustion engine. Like, the phone is not that complicated. And my point on that is, I really feel like there needs to be an apparatus of, and I don't even describe it as conservative, just like, hey, we're going to serve the 70% of the population that is not woke. And that's what we did at Outkick. And that's how we had success with that as a media company before Fox bought it. I think we speak to 70% of Americans that are all saying every day on this program, why not build a business that is designed for those 70% in every possible facet of life? Because if I had a choice between a phone that was made that worked as well as the iPhone, which I think Elon's would, I'd pick it over the iPhone based on Apple's politics. I think you would, Buck. I think a huge percentage of our audience would. That's my hope, that Elon can make that happen, that he has the willingness and the ability and the wherewithal.